At all. I'm very pleased to tell you that we have continued to see the sort of very positive approach to the discussions that we have seen before. These are extraordinarily complex issues. You've got to understand, the Schengen acquis, the visa regulation, etc. It's a lot of issues that are legal, where plugging Gibraltar into that system, but not making ourselves a member of the Schengen acquis is a very complex thing. You have to go through, not line, by issue to ensure that we will comply with the regulations in a way that is going to give security to the parties that are the member states of Schengen, at the same time that the European Union is comfortable, the United Kingdom is comfortable, that Gibraltar is comfortable, and of course the reality is that Spain is a member state of the European Union, which is the club that owns Schengen, and so therefore Spain needs to be comfortable as well. And doing this properly in a way that is going to lead to a treaty that is going to endure, and not one that we will see and not like and perhaps suffer for a short period, is something that requires a lot of hard work. Ditto, and that's just immigration and people, ditto the issues that relate to goods and the ability to move goods freely. So this is a very, very conscientious job that is being done. I want to thank all of the negotiating teams, not just the Gibraltar negotiating team, but the United Kingdom negotiating team, the European Union negotiating team, the officials in Spain that we have been working with now for many years, trying to get to the stage where we are able to do something that produces a positive out of Brexit rather than a negative, in a way that doesn't allow them to cross our red lines, that doesn't allow us to cross their red lines. This is very difficult, and in the run-up to Christmas, to go to London in particular, as the Commission team did, and expose themselves because of the pandemic as it is, shows a commitment to this process, which we must be grateful for, we must recognise, and the numbers of people involved in Whitehall, across all of the departments, giving policy advice to the government of Gibraltar, and the number of people involved in the European Commission across all of the areas of policy there as well, is really quite remarkable when you think of Gibraltar and even the cross-frontier workforce that comes to Gibraltar in the context of what is the European Union. We have to recognise that, and we have to be grateful for that engagement.
Spain has said the current situation at the frontier, where the red ID cards are accepted and passports not stamped, is unsustainable. It is, after all, a gesture of goodwill. So what will happen now?
So I anticipate that there will be a detailed statement about all of those technical aspects around this extension in coming days. My belief from the discussions we have had already is that we will continue to maintain the status quo until Easter, until the first 3 months of the year, or Easter the first quarter, to ensure that we also keep pressure on ourselves to deliver in the time frame that we envisaged. And I say the time frame that we envisaged because if you recall, when we announced the New Year's Eve agreement last year on the 31st of December, we expected it would take another 6 months of negotiation to reach the stage where we had a treaty or an agreement. In fact, we've only had 3 months of negotiation. The first negotiation was in October. So we haven't yet gone beyond what we thought would be the 6 months of required engagement between the United Kingdom and the European Union with the New Year's Eve agreement political framework on the table. We've only had 3 months of that because the European Union, through its procedures and because of the TCA and ratification of the TCA, etc., was not able to spin up a mandate which was for us completely unacceptable until before the summer, or ratify that mandate with some slight changes by September and start negotiating until October. So we haven't had 6 months of negotiation as we expected we would need.
Well, maybe because last year the agreement was struck on the 31st of December, but it seems like the end of the year sort of gives you something to aim for. Is there a danger of a loss in momentum?
No, far from it. In fact, I think that there is now actually a lot of momentum. The fourth round has been helpful in showing more potential understanding between the parties in respect of the areas where there was not understanding before. A lot of discussion around the positions that the parties have had and why they've had them. So I'm actually very hopeful that what is happening is that negotiating teams are starting to see that actually, yes, there is that, as I've said for some time, that route to a treaty which preserves all of the issues that the United Kingdom and the European Union bring to the table as sine qua nons that they must have, but nonetheless delivers on the New Year's Eve political framework becoming a lasting European United Kingdom treaty.
Chief Minister, you sound very optimistic, but the New Year's Eve agreement is there and it could just be transposed. Is there a stumbling block?
No, there is no major stumbling block, but you have to understand, the New Year's Eve agreement sometimes says in one sentence something that is going to require chapters and chapters of text. And if that chapter and chapter of text, of legal text in the treaty, is not included, there may be reference to chapters and chapters of directives, regulations, treaty text of other European treaties. This is now a huge legal exercise which has layered on top of it all of the politics of the European Union and its relationship with the United Kingdom, and all of the politics of the past 300 years between Gibraltar and Spain. So this is an extraordinarily difficult and complex exercise, which is worth doing and is worth doing right. But we need to ensure that we don't perpetuate the period of negotiation. None of the parties want that. We're all putting pressure on each other in a good way to try and urge each other on. The momentum is there, and I sincerely believe that with 3 more months of the level of intensity that we've had since October, we will be able to have in the first quarter what we wanted to have by the end of this year, which is the treaty between the United Kingdom and the European Union. I remain optimistic that that can happen. There will be challenges along the way. There will be, of course, difficult parts of this negotiation to come, but that doesn't mean that we are going to give up on a positive resolution that is safe and secure for the people of Gibraltar, that provides for all our equities to be protected in respect of our sovereignty, jurisdiction, and control, the key issues that we have always wanted to protect, but in the context of course, what was our membership of the European Union until 2016, and thereafter until we finally left de facto and de jure.
There was a report from the European Commission on a revision to the Schengen Borders Code and the reintroduction of internal border checks. Could this have an effect on the frontier with Spain?
So I'm very happy to answer the question, if you like, about that, but this has got absolutely nothing to do with us. This is about how the procedures are put in place when it is necessary to put back Schengen controls. In other words, when is a country able to say, or how is the European Commission able to say, Schengen has to be suspended because of grounds of public security, public health, or public policy? Now, those are very circumspect moments when you can suspend Schengen. In the context of Gibraltar, you might say, well, does this allow the suspension of Schengen because another Aurora arrives with what is potentially a public health issue, not the sort of public health issue that we're dealing with today, just instances of what we might call runny tummy, and can that lead to Schengen being suspended? So what the Commission is doing is trying to ensure that no member state is able, again, as France did in the context of immigration issues, unilaterally raise barriers on immigration between the Schengen member states, and set out a procedure which will now provide for that in a much more detailed way. So for Gibraltar, in the context of having a relationship with Schengen, the further sophistication of the Schengen rules and the further codification of the Schengen rules, in the event that there were ever necessary circumstances for those rules to be suspended temporarily, is only a good thing, because then you have an objective criteria against which to judge any potential attempt to suspend Schengen between Gibraltar and Spain in the event that we've done the treaty and that is operating in the proper way.